Welcome back to Power of the Pen, Identities and Social Issues in Fiction and Nonfiction. We come to Block A, Week 1, in which we're going to look at issues of the development of identity in community, how a person's community of origin can support and or conflict with their development of their identity or selfhood. And we're going to do that in the context of important craft topics of voice and setting in fiction and literary journalism.
Starting off with fiction, you establish your narrative or your character voice through a relationship with setting, looking at elements like physical surroundings, cultural context, historical context. These kinds of aspects can help you to take your character from a flat surface into a three-dimensional organized person. One of the things that I try to encourage my students to do is to really look at various positives and negatives in relation to their character and how their character situates themselves within a certain community or a certain environment or a certain physical place. These are all elements that I think will help you to develop a stronger character. Basically using these aspects of the setting to create a sense of the narrator's community, it can become a backdrop for influencing voice. And I think that that's important.
And the same holds in writing literary journalism. You want to establish the authorial voice through the treatment of the setting. And setting equals place, context in current culture and in history, the people who inhabit that setting and interact with that setting. You want to create a portrait or a report of people determined by their setting and the setting as it defines the people. Here's an example. After I had spent literally years covering the war in the former Yugoslavia, and I was sitting down trying to begin a book about it, the book that would become Only the Nails Remain, Scenes from the Balkan Wars, I was trying to think, how can I get this thing started? And then I remembered something I heard everywhere in Slovenia and Bosnia, Croatia, Serbia. It was very common for somebody to tell a story and say, "Can you imagine?" It's just a simple throwaway line. And I thought, what if I begin just with that? Can you imagine? Because in a way, the book was about how to imagine this setting far away, this war that while it was on the front pages of everyday newspapers, the daily newspapers, was in so many ways unfamiliar. So just that one line opened up a way to think about that setting and how I might have a voice that would carry me through the writing of this book. So those are the kinds of things that we'll be looking at in this first week of Power of the Pen. Onward.
Kia Corthron is an American author and playwright. Her plays include Breath Boom, Cage Rhythm, Come Down Burning, Life by Asphyxiation, and the novel The Castle Cross, the Magna Carta. As a playwright, Corthron has received numerous awards, including several for her body of work, the Wyndham Campbell Prize for Drama, the United States Artist Jane Addams Fellowship, the Simon Great Plains Playwright Award, and the Lee Reynolds Award.
So one of the lessons that I learned in terms, because as I said, I was teaching myself to write a novel, but it's a lesson I took directly from a novel, was when I was in England at I visited the Bronte house, and by that point I had never read any of the Bronte sisters, and so I read Wuthering Heights, which was by one of the sisters. Then I read Jane Eyre, which is a novel by Charlotte Bronte. And there, the basic story is that she's a governess. She comes to teach the children of this rich man named Rochester. And there's quickly this romantic energy that happens between the two of them. So this is early on at the beginning, when this is going on, and he leaves for a little bit. They've just met, but the electricity happens already. And I would recommend everyone to read Jane Eyre. It's an amazing book and feels very contemporary. And so he comes back with all these wealthy people. Now, she was an orphan. She's very poor. And he has all these wealthy people, including his fiance, and they have this party over the house. And he orders Jane, who does not want to deal with these people, to come down into this room. And she is over in the corner. In my mind, I picture it was like a window seat because she's sort of trying to hide from everybody in the room. And all these people, about her same age, but all wealthy, know she's there, but completely ignore her as they all talk about how they tortured their governesses growing up. So it's this really nasty thing that's going on. And I keep hearing them, reading them. And this one did this one to her governess, and that was so funny, and this one did this. And I kept thinking, I was so angry for Jane, but the author did not come back to Jane. So I was thinking, what is she feeling? I'm so angry. And finally, she runs out of the room, and Rochester catches her in the hall and says, why are you crying? And it's the first time that the author lets us absolutely know what she's feeling. But I was feeling it anyway. And so it's brilliant because it was there, and it didn't spoon feed me. And I realized when I write a play, I trust the audience. I write this text. I trust these, with the best actors, in the best of all worlds. It's going to come across the audience. I don't have to spoon feed them. And it's actually much more powerful because of the subtlety and not giving it all away. And I realize I can do the same thing with a novel at that moment. Yeah, I should say that the way I write is not agitation propaganda, which is, very directly saying, I believe in this, or, this is my point of view. I should say I don't necessarily have a problem with agitprop per se. It's just not the way I write. And I should say this. For example, years ago, I was in a group called Artwork. It was this little coterie of political artists. Most of them were visual artists. And I remember there was it was sort of run by this I was young then in grad school. It was a middle-aged Palestinian immigrant and a middle-aged Jewish American man. And they would do things like, he went to Latin America in the 80s, and they would write signs inciting people to strike. So that's direct action. It's complete agitprop, and it's legitimate for what they're doing. In writing, it usually doesn't work so well. It's just a different process because people, if you just come out and jump in and say, this is how I feel, people can be taken aback. People can, it just won't reach them in the same way. I'm not sure if I'm articulating right, but I'm going to say a little example. So my book, which has to do with two black brothers and two white brothers, it starts in 1941. One's the black family's in Maryland, the white family's in Alabama. Here's an example. This is during racist Jim Crow apartheid U.S. And this is a part from, it's the point of view of a 12-year-old boy in first person, and he's having ice cream. He's a black boy, and he and his family and his little brother, they're having ice cream. So he's Dwight, and his little brother is Elliot. He's 6 years old. Elliot's very hyper. So this is Dwight speaking, the 12-year-old. We gotta wait a little, because the picnic table already got the Wiley twins, Marco and Moki and their parents. They wave, we wave back. Take your time, Daddy, tell them. Though with ice cream melting, ain't like we can hold on forever. They nod gratitude, but I can see their mama saying, come on, every time Moki or Marco take a breath between licks. We can sit there, say Elliot. There's 5 other picnic tables, 2 of them all empty. That's for the white people, say Mama. The white people's on the other 3, say Elliot. Can't we use one of them too? They ain't using no way? None of us say nothing. So in that way, it expresses, shows the racism, that there are these blank white these tables that they should be able to sit on, but they're saved for the white people. So, and in a way, it expresses this without coming out and them saying that's racist, and which they wouldn't have said. It's much more naturalistic. I'll say one more example, which a play of mine called Life by Asphyxiation that takes place on death row. I should say I always have a strong point of view of where I'm writing. I don't sit on the fence. So I am anti-death penalty, but I don't come out and say you should be anti-death penalty in the play. If the audience leaves and they don't realize I was anti-death penalty, I haven't done my job, because I do take the point of view. But in this play, I wrote it, the main character is a man named Jojo, a black man. He's 53, I think. He's been on death row for 30 years or so, since he was in his young 20s. He did an ugly crime, because it was important to me that he really did do an awful crime. I really hope there aren't people that think people that are innocent should go to be executed. But I thought if I'm really going to say something about it, then it has to be somebody who's guilty and did something ugly. He's a very different person than he was then, and very regretful. But when he was in his young 20s, he raped and murdered a 15-year-old white girl. There's a part where the girl, I should say, I had a surreal tip on, even though it's contemporary, he's on death row with Crazy Horse and Nat Turner, who Crazy Horse is a Native American during the 19th century, was fought against a hero who fought against the white cavalry, U.S. cavalry. And Nat Turner, during slavery in the U.S., was somebody who rose up as a slave. So I was playing with these people who, if they were today, would also be on death row, these warriors. And at the other person, I realized something was missing when I was writing this. And then I realized I don't have the victim's point of view. So Katie is this 15-year-old girl who was with him all the time. Whether the audience wants to think she's a ghost or in his head, that is up to them. I don't define it, but she's there. And I also make her, she's not a flower at all. She's like this tough basketball girl. And she's always challenging him. It's more like she has this bossy relationship because she knows he's so guilty. She can do this to him. Every once in a while, the pain of hers will come up, but it's very subtle, and she holds it back in. There's a point late in the play when he's preparing, because he's finally, after all these years, is about to die. And she's in there with him. And it's one of the few times she's not making him feel guilty. And as she sees him preparing for this transition, she says, "Murder. Once it happens to you, you don't wish it on nobody else." And in that way, with them being full characters, I make my statement about the death penalty. And that's all that's there. If there is a political issue and there's something you really want to say, it is important to say it. So write it, say it. Then, in the next draft, say it a little more subtly. The next draft a little more subtly. As long as you've got that foundation, it's going to be there. And at some point, you're going to affect people in a way that's not them feeling you're yelling at them, but they're taking it in their heart emotionally, and it's going to hit them